This is the S2G podcast, where we share conversations that help us understand how to scale the food, agriculture, oceans, and energy transitions. I'm your host, Tanya Bekrisis. In this episode, Chuck Templeton sits down with Nikhil, Arora, and Alejandro, Velez, co-founders of home gardening company Back to the Roots, to share their journey of building a business that has had numerous iterations but has never lost track of its vision. As a reminder, this content is for informational purposes only. It should not be taken as legal, business, tax, or investment advice, or be used to evaluate any investment or security, and is not directed at any investor or potential investor in any investment vehicle sponsored by S2G. Investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. Specific companies mentioned in this podcast are for educational purposes and should not be construed as an endorsement of any kind. Please note that S2G may maintain investments in some of the companies discussed on this podcast. For more important information, please see s2gventures.com/disclosures. Whether it's a basil plant on the counter, a tomato vine on the balcony, or a raised bed in a backyard, home gardening has become wildly popular. This rise could be attributed to pandemic lockdowns or to rising food prices, but Nikhil, Arora, and Alejandro Velez also see a generation of people who want to reconnect to their food and get back to the roots, if you will. Today, Back to the Roots line of gardening products can be found in Home Depot, Walmart, and Target stores across the country. They are backed by a slate of celebrity investors such as Michael Pollan, Aisha Curry, Blake Myosky, founder of Tom's Shoes, Carmelo Anthony, Tony Robbins, and Gabrielle Union, to name a few. But Back to the Roots' own roots can be traced back to a passing comment in a class at Berkeley that inspired the founders to start growing mushrooms in their dorm rooms. Nikhil and Alejandro had no roadmap for their business at that point, but they had a deep conviction in the opportunity for food and garden products that would foster connection. They had to be scrappy and weather a few false starts, but they've managed to carry that through line to today, catering to the next generation of gardeners by becoming the only organic end-to-end gardening brand. In this episode, Nikhil and Alejandro talk about the countless hours they have invested in understanding their customer, how to strike a balance between keeping doors open and knowing when to close them, their efforts to innovate in an incumbent-driven category, the power of compounding relationships, and of course, always having an eye on your North Star. As leaders of a brand focused on transparency, they are also remarkably open and honest about their experiences and what they have learned. So let's dig in.
Hello. It's great to be here with both of you today. I'm super excited about this. It's just always been fun to watch how far you two have really come on your personal journeys as leaders and entrepreneurs and individuals. So I'd love for each of you to just introduce yourselves and give a little background. Alex, you want to start?
Chuck, it's awesome to be here. My name is Alejandro, and I'm from Colombia, South America. Immigrated to the States when I was 10 years old to a tiny little town in Michigan called Paw Paw, about 5,000 people, and then ended up at Berkeley for college, where I met my business soulmate, Nikhil.
This is Nikhil here, the other half of this crazy team. I grew up in Southern California, moved up to the Bay Area for college, where we stumbled upon this idea, stumbled upon each other, and blink, and here we are. It feels like sometimes. It's good to be here with you, Chuck, and excited to chat and reflect. You've been a part of this journey for a long time with us, too.
Let's go back to those early days. People have talked about it, and one of my favorite pictures is, I think, Alex, you were standing in a bucket of coffee grounds, bent over with, looked like maybe your pants were rolled up and all that stuff like that so they wouldn't get all wet and soggy. Tell us about that founding story and how you guys started this journey.
So we were in this about 200 people business ethics class, and our professor brought up this random fact in this lecture about sustainability that he had read somewhere that mushrooms could go on spent coffee grounds. It was literally one sentence in this class. And for some crazy reason, the two of us, or the two kids who after class both independently reached out to our professor for more information. Professor Alan Ross. We've actually gone back every single year to that same class and kind of give a guest lecture, which is really fun to reconnect there. But we both reached out independently, Chuck, to him and said, hey, you mentioned something about growing mushrooms. Do you have any more information? He was like, I don't even know where I read that, but this other kid seemed about it too. You guys should probably meet up. And that's how we first got introduced, was both of us with a shared curiosity about there's something about growing food, in this case, mushrooms, off of coffee ground waste. And the more we learned later is that mushrooms are this incredibly nutritious, protein-rich source of food that can be grown indoors in urban areas, and coffee grounds, which there are millions and millions of pounds of it in all of our communities, is a fantastic growing medium for it.
So they start collecting coffee grounds from local businesses and growing mushrooms. Alex and Nikhil have shared this founding story many times, including on How I Built This with Guy Raz. But Nikhil says there's something more to the story that is often overlooked.
But I think when I look back at those early days, the more I reflect on it, that was really about the two of us and building a relationship and realizing just how much we enjoyed spending time with each other, how much we enjoyed just being curious together and solving problems together. We gave up our job offers, investment banking and consulting, to go start dumpster diving for coffee ground waste and growing mushrooms. And after we graduated, we had grown one test bucket of mushrooms at that point. It took us, 6-7 months to replicate that again. Maybe looking back now over the years, that seems like a short amount of time, but when you're in it, day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 100, nothing. And I look back and like, why did we keep on doing that? And it was the partnership we were developing. And I still think in so many ways that North Star is still so true today. It's kept us through a lot of twists and turns in this journey.
I think Nikhil's spot on. We were not biology majors. We were not into agriculture. Neither of us had grown anything in our lives. Yet we found it really cool that you could take waste and grow food on it. And as I get older, I think it wasn't about just that we were growing food on waste. Yes, that was important and that intrigued us, but it was that we were doing it together. And if you look at the DNA of this brand, both of those are integral to back to the roots. It's about connecting to each other, connecting to the land, to food, and doing it in the most sustainable way.
And I just think the word connection is such a great foundation and ethos to who you guys are and what you do with families and kids and food. So it took you 7 months to get a second successful growth. So then how did you think about what's the product offering going to be? Who are we going to give this to? Who's going to buy it? How did you get to that first commercial product?
The goal at that point was we were selling fresh mushrooms to farmers markets, grocery stores, restaurants. So when we started scaling up that farm, we were collecting 3.5 million pounds or so of coffee grounds a year that were being discarded. And this goes back to what was the business model, so to speak. At that point, it was 1, can we grow produce? And then 2, we started realizing what we were doing, collecting coffee ground waste, was actually service in and of itself. And we were replacing waste management. So we began to get paid by cafes like Pete's Coffee to collect their coffee ground waste. And then once we were done, our leftover waste, spent mushroom substrate, was in and of itself another fantastic growing medium that we realized we could sell to local farmers and community gardens as a fertilizer, soil amendment. So early on, it was the waste of waste. We were extracting value from and finding ways to offer and upcycle that to our community. And that's where we spent our first 3, 4, 5 years almost, Alex, just scaling up our farm. Literally 5 a.m. we'd wake up, we'd be dumpster diving for coffee ground waste, coming back to our farm, growing produce, selling that at farmers markets and restaurants. And we did thousands of demos talking to community, our customers and families. And that's really where we, one, learned so much about the DNA of this brand, but also 2, realized that what was getting us most excited, Chuck, wasn't just growing the produce, but it was teaching folks how to do it themselves and teed us up into our next chapter. But early on, we were farmers selling produce.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how did you pay for this? Did you raise money at this point? How were you paying yourselves and paying for the operations?
Man, early on, Chuck, and this is something that I tell folks, you got to use every vehicle, every option, every opportunity around you. Early on, we were getting paid for raw materials. We had a bunch of amazing interns from Cal who were helping us apply to literally every single business plan competition under the sun. Probably raised a couple $100,000 from just business plan competitions that we would apply for. We applied for public. There's redevelopment grants to build out warehouses. The city of Oakland became an incredible support with the redevelopment grants, workforce hiring credits from the federal government. We were private, public, trying to find capital and cash wherever. This was all bootstrapped. None of it was equity based. We were just trying to find resources out there. And We also then, as we got further along the journey, we ended up using Kickstarter and crowdfunding. So it was a lot of just scrappy capital raising wherever we could. And looking back, we spent a lot of our time probably applying for grants, Alex, not just focusing on the business, but we were trying to find cash wherever we could, Chuck.
Some companies go out to raise money with nothing more than an idea. But Back to the Roots had multiple sources of revenue from the start and got creative with funding. But at some point, they knew they had to evolve.
How did you start to think about, okay, how do we productize what we're doing? Was scale something you thought about at that point in time? How did you get aspirations to go bigger?
I think we knew there was something about this brand that was bigger than even mushrooms from the start. But it's even early on, we didn't call this company XYZ Mushroom Farm. It was BTTR Ventures, Back to the Roots, doing things better, doing things differently. But it was really, I think, through all those demos that we were talking about. We say thousands, not exaggerating, thousands of demos at farmers markets, and for years, every day, every night, every weekend, just out there and learning and seeing how excited folks were to try to grow these themselves. It was really the spark, Chuck, and people wanting to come by our farm and pick up one of these big, bulky, basketball-sized clear bags of fungus, but they were so excited to take that home and try to grow their own mushrooms at home, where it made us realize there's something way bigger than this. And if we could turn what we're doing into some kind of a kit or at-home thing, we could go from just servicing a 5-mile radius to getting every home, every classroom experiencing this magic of growing their own food. And it was the people asking us, can we try to do this themselves, that finally got us inspired to create our first packaged consumer good, which was our Grow It at Home mushroom kit, which we were then able to start selling, shipping across the country and getting into retailers, et cetera.
And so how did you then think about designing that first product, and what was the research that you did to figure out if you want to get formal and go like the 4 Ps, price, product, place, promotion, or how did you think about now developing a product for the first time?
I'd be lying if I told you we had a big 4 Ps thing for that first mushroom kit, Chuck. It was through conversations. And I look back on that, and what is Back to the Roots today fundamentally came out of all of those customer interaction conversations. I guess now you look forward, if it's a larger company, you say, oh, we're going to pay for consumer research. And we just did that. We were the farmers, we were the salespeople, we were the store, we were operations, we were all of it. I think one of our hypotheses, Chuck, was that this is about the foodies and people wanting to grow, especially mushrooms at home. And we quickly realized this. The reason people were stopping to talk to us for 20 minutes on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. in a farmer's market was not because they're going to grow a quarter pound of mushrooms out of a kit 10 days later. It was because of the connection that they felt of getting their hands dirty and trying to grow something. It was because of the stories they would tell us about. My mom used to grow something. My grandma used to grow something. It was about wanting to get their kids involved. And what lit us up too was just seeing the spark that it set off, right? Of people realizing, whoa, like if I can grow this, like how does that grow? Or when we have tons of classrooms over, just seeing kids as minds being blown about how something that they may have seen on their pizza, mushrooms, like just where it came from. And I think all that fueled our North Star and fueled this brand's DNA to this day.
Yeah.
Like why we wake up is I look back on those moments.
Yeah. I do feel like you have hit a visceral nerve in people in ways that is foundational, right? And where our food comes from. Obviously, humans have been eating since the beginning, right? And you guys have figured out a way to capture that and bring it to people in a different and unusual way. So now you've got these, I'm going to use your language that we had back in the day, so ready to grow products where you were growing things. And then you decided, okay, we're going to launch a ready to eat product. You had one of the first identity preserved 100% stone ground biodynamic cereals, right? You were selling it in Whole Foods. You were working with schools. I think the New York Public School District had it in 2,000 schools or something. And so what was that journey and why did you decide to do that?
So when we looked at what we wanted to do, we wanted folks connected to food, connected to the earth. And I remember as we were at Expo West and we were looking at all these different products, and this is all should just be real food. And whether you're growing it through our mushroom kits and other grow kits, or you're eating it through some different vegetables or packaged goods, all of this should just be coming from the ground. So we went from selling grow kits in produce departments and floral departments and home improvement centers to creating ready to eat 3 ingredient stone milled breakfast cereals and snacks. And it sounds so crazy. And at the same time, this journey for Back to the Roots has and continues to be about simplifying a grocery store, simplifying the experience for a consumer around knowing where their food comes from and connecting to it. So we said we ought to go out there and put it out ourselves, just like we're getting folks to grow their own food. We ought to create food with the same integrity, the same transparency that you get when you grow your own food.
But you're still a very early startup, right? And you're still working on commercial traction. So how did you get to that realization that you needed to at least pull back a little bit on your vision, knowing that you weren't going to give up on it, but make sure that the business was stable financially, and then you'd be able to use that platform to do more in the future? How did you get to that decision?
I think it was ongoing learnings every single day. And there's a point where we felt like we had traction in both of them. We were the first organic cereal ever offered in U.S. public schools. We were servicing millions of kids a day with a low sugar breakfast cereal that they had chosen. But at the same time, we were starting to see, I think more than we expected, even an acceleration of interest in our ready to grow line. And I think it was really a capital allocation. The cost to scale ready to eat at that time was just far more significant. Lower margins, lower shelf lives, which means faster capital turns.
It was just a negative gross margin business at first. Did we have a path to get to positive margins? Yes. But at the end of the day, in business, cash is air, and you've got to have air to survive. And based on what we raised versus our runway, we just weren't going to get there fast enough. We didn't want to sacrifice doing this in the right way. But in that, we failed because you could look at it both levers. We didn't partner with our investors enough to tell them this is a multi-year journey to get this business to gross margin positive and profitable. Or we just should have never launched it to begin with under those margins. But we're still after this same vision. It has not changed. And I think that's what's the beauty. And you look at where we are today, that purity in our approach as founders is paying us tenfold now that we have such a clear strategy, such clear distribution, and products that are so differentiated in the marketplace. How we got there has evolved a lot, but we've been so tenacious about making sure that never changes.
As you went through these conversations and realized that you got to focus on one or the others, you get more traction in the ready to grow lines. And so then what happens? You need to be in 2,000 Home Depot stores or 2,000 Lowe's stores. You got to start to build scale for these things. And there's some oligopoly structures in there from the competitive landscape who, if they want, space, they have lots of different areas they can negotiate to actually get their new products into the mix. And so how did you go about punching above your weight, for lack of better terms?
As we realized that we were over our skis in terms of two product lines that had, on the short and medium term, completely different strategies to get to where they needed to get, we went out and we, within a few days, partnered with Nature's Path. And we created and forged a licensing agreement, which they took all our assets, inventory, and contracts that we had, and they took that over. And that division of the business was what just created this laser focus where we now had the three things aligned: the vision of connecting kids, families to food, to the earth, to the land. We had products in the ready to grow space, in the gardening space, that nobody else had. The brand that stood for organics in a space that didn't have the wave of the food movement yet. It was almost like a decade behind the food movement. So we were sitting in a room to a buyer who's now a vice president at a home improvement retailer today. And his question was, what does organic even mean? And this is when already organics was taking off on the food side, but we almost went back and realized that this is such an untapped market of the same vision we have. We needed to really laser focus. So we had products that really had a fit in this category that was right. It was millennials were starting to really get into gardening themselves. And then how to get to retailers is something that we had learned through the years. So it was this kind of all three of the things came together.
I think, Chuck, you asked about how do you go about getting in an oligopoly marketplace the attention and the space needed. And I think one of them is that we've realized that I think our consistency to that North Star and that vision, that is our capital, where we can't right now go and write millions of dollars of checks to get space, but our currency isn't capital, so to speak. It's that consistent, unwavering North Star. And I think, two, we were an undergrad at Haas and every business school, I'm sure, around the country. You can find 1 million books on the power of compounding money. And I think what you don't hear enough about, and there needs to be a class about this and books about this, is the power of compounding relationships. And I look back at these last few years, what's allowed us to also move with such pace has been these compounding relationships, whether it starts with the two of us and the energy and the ability to tackle those opportunities. It's our suppliers. We have 7-8 year partners on our design team where we can move at lightning speed to pounce on opportunities that come up. Longstanding team members, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Director of Ops have been with us for going over a decade, which again, just to have leadership teams with that kind of cohesion when you can go through tough times lets you move so much faster when you have that much trust built in there. Compounding relationships when it comes to your retail partners, Home Depot. We've been built that by one store at a time. And as Alex mentioned, working our way up. And so I think all that compounding relationships let us capture that moment. And I think the last piece is understanding there's a dichotomy and a conflict in what you often hear at startups, which is focus. And at the same time, you got to open up doors and test and see what's on the other side of that. I think what we've gotten better at now is being able to quickly still open doors, but getting more ruthless at closing them if the margin structure isn't there, the velocities aren't there, and realizing some of the learnings from what we did. Like, if that isn't aligning, cut it, and what's the next opportunity? And we've gone from just indoor gardening to a whole line now of organic soils and seeds and fertilizers and raised beds. And it's been this dramatic, exciting transformation of our brand and the consumers we can reach and speak to. And I feel like it's just understanding there's no one way to do it. You can't just say focus. You can't just say try a bunch of things. It's got to be this balance. And I think some of that only comes from feeling the pain of not closing doors fast enough, or sometimes maybe not opening them and exploring. So it's been a crazy last few years.
Yeah, I see two different analogies here. One is, instead of skating where the puck is going, you're standing where the puck is going already because of your persistence in the North Star and in having the tenacity and fortitude to stay there and having the consumer catch up to you to some degree, right? And then two is, my background's been in software. And so in software, you test and iterate. And I think that's something, like you said, since the sale of the ready-to-eat products, you guys have built this company much more like a software company where you are introducing new things, you're testing and learning very quickly. I'm going to jump in on a couple things that I think you guys have done. So first of all, selling the first peat-free soil, right? And so peat is obviously something that's mined and it has a tremendous amount of organic matter in it. And so is very good from a carbon sequestration standpoint. And so to be able to have a peat-free soil that you're not destroying and releasing all this carbon into the atmosphere, I think is super innovative. You've launched the garden industry's first ever packaging made from 100% ISCC certified post-consumer recycled plastic for your potting mix. And so that was a first. Your potting mix is 100% made in the USA and uses no synthetic fertilizer. Walmart named Back to the Roots a Giga Guru, their highest honor, after just 1 year. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I just think there's so many things that you've done that have laddered up to this North Star that have been industry first, or certainly industry highlights.
You asked a question around just the Walmart Giga Guru. Chuck, that's been super exciting to have the world's largest retailer really putting their money where their mouth is around wanting to transform their business to just a more sustainable, regenerative supply chain. And it's doesn't happen overnight, of course, at the scale they're at, but they have a lot of programs that are trying to incentivize brands, and I think most importantly, educate merchants about these initiatives, because for many of them, they're switching desks every few years and may not know the intricacies of a specific category. So how can their sustainability teams going to build metrics for each category of things that we should track and improve, whether it's removing certain chemicals from the lawn and garden space. In this case, now removing peat from our soils. And when it comes to plastic, that's one of our loudest rallying cries, Chuck. It's crazy in this category. It's lawn and garden, which is all about literally greening the earth and planting plants and trees. And right now, no matter how great your soil is, how local and organic it is sourced, et cetera, when you're done with a weekend project of gardening, you're still left with a trash bag full of plastic waste. And to us, that's just not okay for us as an industry to just accept that as the norm. And so we spent the last 3 years working with a lot of suppliers across the world. And this year, literally right now in stores, launched the first soil packaging in the entire lawn and garden industry made from 100% recycled post-consumer recycled content, which is something we're really proud of, really excited about. But I think at the same time, acknowledging that's just the start, because that bag is still not recyclable. And we, as an industry, we have to be okay with acknowledging these things and just saying it out loud and not trying to hide and skirt around this, and then start working on it. We're actually right now working on some incredible pilots I'm really excited about to actually close the loop on that second part of it and make that now recyclable back into the waste stream. And we'll be sharing more about that later this year. I think the way we think about these things, it's coming from a place of looking forward and not judgment. And I think it's really easy for folks, especially in this world, organics and regenerative and sustainability, to look at other brands and companies and be like, how could they? I can't believe they did this. And I think that just slows down so much progress, because it creates such friction unnecessarily versus just coming at it from a different lens of like, we just know more today than we knew 20 years ago. And so it's our responsibility now, knowing the impact of peat, to try to avoid that, knowing the impact of microplastics on human health and environmental health, to try to avoid that, and having the humility, I think, to know that in 20 years, our kids are going to be looking back at us and being like, oh my goodness, how could they have done that? So it's just the nature of progress. And so we try to approach some of these initiatives, Chuck, just with that kind of lens of, this isn't about right or wrong. We now know this as an industry, and now that we know it, it's our responsibility to act on it.
Each of these innovations individually is shifting industry standards, but maybe the biggest innovation is that Back to the Roots is designing a brand that in every way caters to the next generation of gardener.
I think that's one of the beauties right now where we're at actually as Back to the Roots. We're the only end-to-end gardening brand in the marketplace, which is, I think, it almost sounds crazy that 5 years ago, before Back to the Roots, if you had started a garden, you'd be buying seeds from one brand, soil from another brand, plant food from another brand, seed starting supplies from a different brand, and you go home. And I think our vision is bringing in a whole new generation to the garden. We knew that we had to simplify this experience. And that's one of our strong beliefs, that simplicity in this can drive category growth. And simplicity comes both from how we design each product, but also the ecosystem. And that's where we feel there's such a strong flywheel that's being created right now.
We created this flywheel as a brand. The amount of engagement that we have from our consumers. I'm in store every Thursday, and when we're in stores, know the intricate details of the brand is incredible. I think it goes back to the category has had just a couple players that dominated it. So for a very long time, those companies have been creating products for gardeners that have continually aged with those brands. And I think that they've done a very good job at speaking to that gardener. And I think we came in as a brand that from the very beginning, we're starting from a whole new generation of gardeners that hadn't gardened before. And it's also why I think ultimately we've found in most of our retailers, and why we've continued to expand doors of distribution from 101 stores when we piloted with Depot to over 10,000 stores, working anywhere from Menards in the middle of the country to Tractor Supply. And the reason why is we are being captains, not pirates. We are bringing a whole new gardener and giving them the confidence they need.
So what's next for Back to the Roots? Where do you see this going?
we are the rallying cry that we don't want pesticides in our gardens. We don't want plastics in our soils, which we're in 2024 and we still have millions and millions of pounds of plastics in our soil. So you speak to what's next. It's exactly what we're doing today. We are a very simple company at this point. We sell dirt in a bag, but we got to make the best damn dirt with the most sustainable, environmental conscious bag. And that is a pursuit that is going to take many years to do. And we want to bring it to our consumer in the most innovative ways. But we've just now created the first seed packet that can be sold online, picked and packed with free shipping. It is not sexy to anybody listening to this podcast. That is innovation at its best. That took over 2 years of us working on getting our packet to have free shipping. If you think about it, it's a $2.99
for a single packet.
For a $2.99 seed packet, where our retail partner makes money, we make money, and our consumer gets to pick and pack. We've been hearing over and over, our consumers' big pain point to buy online is they don't want a multi-pack. They want to be able to buy individual packets because they want to pick what they're gardening. They don't want to be told what to grow. So we've invested a ton of time and energy and worked with our retail partners. So we're going to do a lot of the same, Chuck, and we're going to do it with a lot of passion, a lot of conviction. And yeah, I think the best is yet to come here.
And I'll just say that the last thing is around, I think, continue to see a lot of exciting partnerships. I think what this brand can do is tap into amazing partners to go back to helping us. How do we inspire a whole new kind of cohort and generation around getting the gardens? Just last week is one of the most surreal goosebump moments for our team. We hosted a kids workshop with the Home Depot, Chuck, and we had over 500,000 kids come out around the country over the course of 3 hours and over 2,000 stores, all planting and building a back to the roots planter. And like, I will never forget in my entire life the feeling of walking into the Emeryville Home Depot and just already seeing kids streaming out with little back to the roots planters and seed packets. And it's one of the things that it breaks your mind to even try to wrap your head around when you zoom out and you're like, there's 500,000 families right now, this exact moment of the country, building a garden at the same time. Or the partnership we mentioned with Bolt House, which is for the first time connecting the dots between grocery and garden, teaching people that it's all a continuum, whether you buy the tomato, the seed packet, the tomato, or the bottle of ketchup, you should have that same level of transparency and trust from your food.
Nikhil is referring to their partnership with Bolthouse Farms and Walmart for their Seed to Sip campaign. Customers who buy any Bolthouse Farms juice at select Walmart stores will receive a coupon to save $1.50 on any garden seed from Back to the Roots. This campaign is an effort to connect the dots between gardening and grocery departments.
So to us, we're like, how do we execute ruthlessly on the fundamentals of retail and product and margin structures, and then layer on top of that some really incredible, exciting partnerships that can help us and continue to grow awareness around this mission. And I think the combination of those two things is what has become this brand's secret sauce.
I just want to sum up a couple of things. I just think it's amazing that you guys hold strong to your North Star. You've made these pivots along the way. You've found where there's real opportunity. You've gotten an amazing set of investors around you. You've got these massive retailers working very closely with you to design this end-to-end solution. You're bringing new people into the category. And the thing we didn't even get to, which I think is just one of the more amazing things about you guys also, is that you've now done this while breaking even and creating EBITDA and actually having a profitable business, which is one of the challenges with entrepreneurs as they're growing. Is a lot of times they just keep spending money and they don't understand this idea around profitability. And I think that's been one of the things that's really been exciting to see you guys do all of this stuff while then also getting to a profitable business as well. But I had one more question. Just any advice or lessons you've learned that you would recommend to entrepreneurs or others listening?
I have two things. I think one is when we were getting started, call it a decade ago, all our friends were founding D2C brands and companies because retail was for old people. It was the past. And we went and we're contrarian in many ways and focus obsessively on retail, and have now done this for the last 10 years. We are now seeing the shift in how it's actually quite the reverse. And the retailers are themselves that evolved and created .coms that capture the entire United States. And nobody wants to have specific passwords for different D2Cs. So I think that's number one. Don't just follow what everybody is doing. Really pick a lane and stick to that. And it's going to have that compounding effect. I think secondly, and I think this is a crystal clear one for everybody, is just have a reason to exist and have it for yourself, for your team. If you do that, there will never be pivots. There's no pivots to our vision. And the folks that come with us will benefit from that if they can stick it out. And I think you're one of those, Chuck, that has S2G has stuck it out with us, and we are grateful to what you've done for this company.
I'll just add one more onto that, Chuck. It comes down to the people. And I'm going to go back to where we started this conversation, the two of us and meeting that fateful college class. And there's no words that can describe how impactful having the right person next to you is. And if I was someone starting something out, I would focus all of my time on figuring that out. Who are you doing it with? And is that the right person? Because when you have, I've now realized and seen so many friends and folks who have had different co-founders and relationships that didn't materialize, that it is the most incredible thing when you have someone who you have such deep respect for, and more than that, alignment of intent, like underlying intent, because what that allows you to do when you have that kind of respect, where Alex is the smartest person I know, and it lets you debate things so strongly, but you're never debating that person's intent. And that's where the magic happens. It's in that sweet spot, that zone of love, respect, trust, that then creates magic. And it starts off with whoever you're doing it with your, in this case, your co-founder. And it should hopefully then translate to the team you hire, your leadership team, to have that same level and obsessing over that. If that's not there, put your energy on solving that first, because everything else will spiral out of control if you don't have that level of trust. To me, I'm like, there's so much time I've just noticed in companies wasted on internal things because you don't have that deep trust of intent. And when that's there, my goodness, it lets you move. It feels like you have a superpower. It lets you move at lightning speed. And the pace, if people were to hear Alex and I debate ideas, they'd probably think we hate each other. We can move so fast and so quickly and be so blunt, but it creates magic because you don't have to worry about, does this person question my intent and trust? And if you don't feel that, then focus on finding that. And maybe it's hard to put into words, but you know when you have it. And just, if you don't have it, step back and be like, maybe I need to reevaluate something, because it's a secret sauce.
That's fantastic. Thanks, guys. Can't imagine spending a better hour. So really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for tuning into the S2G podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, or share it with a friend. For more information or to connect with us, check out s2gventures.com.